you and I are old enough to remember the Arab oil embargo and the Yom Kippur wars that really pushed oil prices around in the mid 1970s. But here we are with another oil incident, right, and turmoil after what happened with Israel and Iran, Brian.
Yeah, and I think that it's important to create some context here as far as the oil issue, right? If you think about Iran, they produce maybe like 1% of the global output of oil. So they're a big player, but they're not huge. The bigger issue is really around the Straits of Hormuz, which is in the Persian Gulf, where if they decide that they're going to, harass some ships as they go through there or try to close it, that's the part that could be really damaging to the flow of oil globally, because about 25% of seaborne crude goes through there. And so that's where I think you're seeing this outsized reaction in the oil markets. Now, obviously, we don't know how this is going to play out, but it did happen so quickly. But we've seen this happen before. Oftentimes, you get spikes in the price of oil. Things play out. Sometimes it's over the course of days, sometimes weeks, sometimes months. But then eventually you do see those oil prices come back down. I find it somewhat encouraging in terms of oil supply that, if you think about President Trump, he went over to the Middle East on some sort of like charm offensive, basically, during the first part of this administration.
It's funny. I didn't know those two words went together. That sounds true. Interesting to me.
Yeah, charm offensive, yes. and so really, I think that it means we do have allies that Saudi Arabia, they have spare capacity. United Arab Emirates, they have some spare capacity. And so I'm not really all that concerned about the longer term implications, but it is quite troubling to see, the price of oil higher, stocks move lower, and then also the loss of life.
And you think about, Brian, if you look at charts, and we do that, and you tie that to crude oil prices, you can see this is not new information, right? We can remember when Russia invaded Ukraine. We know about the October 7th massacre. All of these things, Israel's response to that,
yep.
The fall of Assad in Syria. There's all of these things that have happened that have moved oil prices over time. And like I said, where we started, we can go all the way back to the 1970s. I remember being in my dad's Buick and him just rolling down the hill to the gas station while there was lines of people trying to get gas. And so we have seen this before. We don't expect this to happen now, especially where the United States is as a oil exporter. We're in a much better position today than we were, but that is a really good point. It might not be about the price of oil, but perhaps how they distribute the oil through the Straits of Hormuz. So we're going to watch this closely, but to move on and see how the markets react is probably what people are more concerned about. What's going to happen to their 401ks or other investments as the prices move around. I think that's really the story.
It really is. And a lot of people have really written off investing in a lot of energy companies. It seems like if you looked at how the stock prices have behaved relative to like tech companies. But I think this also highlights why you want that global diversification, which includes that sector diversification. A lot of these energy companies in the United States, you pointed out, we are now an oil exporter. And so if you kind of look at the history of refining in the United States, on the East Coast, they might have to import oil from another country just because there aren't the pipes necessarily connecting them to where a lot of the oil production in the U.S. is. Same thing in the Midwest. We might have to import from Canada as opposed to using domestic energy sources. So it's a part of the piping. It's also the history around the refining equipment because they're calibrated for certain qualities of oil. Maybe this can also be a reminder about how international trade, oil production, it does become a national security issue. And this is where, over the course of time, maybe this is a bit more of a wake-up call in terms of, we do have to keep making progress on this, not just from an economic perspective, but also a national security perspective.
No question. So we're going to watch this, folks. And of course, the other big news that we're going to pay attention to is really what the Federal Reserve will do with rates. And so they are getting a lot of pressure, not only from economic news, but the bond market itself will put pressure on the Federal Reserve. And lastly, how the tax bill moves its way through Congress. These are the three things that could be market moving over the next several weeks and months. And this is the reason why, folks, you know what's in your portfolio, know why you own it, how much you're paying for it. There's a process that we can go through to make sure you understand.